Glad to have you back. If you're just joining us, you're watching the conversation right here on Lagos Television. Now, over the years, we had several calls for a new constitution that is of the people. Some people believe that the 1999 constitution, as amended, is a function of the military, is a creation of the military. Until last week, we had the former Commonwealth Secretary General, Emeka Anyaoku, an elder statesman of the country, led a group of people to meet with Mr. President. They call themselves the Patriots. They also set out modalities for a new constitution and how that should be done. But some critics have said, look, during the presidency of President Olusegun Obasanjo and, of course, Jonathan, there were about 2 conferences of such nature that the recommendations of such conferences are gathering dust at the moment on the shelf of wherever the shelf you may call it. What do you make of this particular call for a new constitution? How is it going to work? Or what will happen to it? Will it go the same way of other conferences, Sovereign National Conference or Constitutional Conference that we've had before? Or better still, the call by so many people that the function of the National Assembly is exactly to do this as enshrined in the Constitution. I'm not a legal practitioner. We've got a senior lawyer here, a constitutional lawyer, Dr. Tunji Abayomi. He's in the studio to help us look at the Patriots' call for political reform. It's a pleasure to have you join us, sir, this morning.
Thank you very
Good morning,
much.
sir.
I appreciate it.
So the first question is perhaps just a general insight into perhaps your own thoughts as to do we really need a constitution? Because the argument is, look, it has never been about the laws that we have in the country. It has always been a function of the human beings that operates or that aligns with the dictates of the Constitution.
Well, it's important to appreciate what is called some basic first principles in making a nation. The first thing is that there has been no controversy about getting a constitution, in other words, constituting Nigeria. In 1960, even before that, from 1950s, our ancestors started to discuss the idea of coming up with a constitution. So the question is, do we need a constitution? It's been decided long ago that we need a constitution. And by the nature of our nation, the peculiarity of Nigeria, we need a constitution. Why do I say that? Nigeria is one of the most unique nations in the world.
Obviously.
In the sense that unique in a peculiar manner. Unique in the sense that when like I said in the Nwabweze conference, which was chaired by Anyaoku, Nigeria is United Nations of Nigeria. It's a nation that is made up of different nationalities, providentially located in different geographical zones. You can barely find any nation like that. Yorubas in the southwest, Igbos, southeast, Ibibio, and so on in the south-south, Tifs, Jukun, center, Kanuri, northeast, Fulanis, northwest. Very unique, permanently located by providence. So now the question is, if you want to form a nation, how do you form it? The only way to form it is to come together and agree on how you want to create a government over those different nationalities, and yet a common government that serves the diversity of the people. Of the people. That's what a constitution is. Now, let me give you another scenario that our people, our generality common people of Nigeria will understand. Now, assuming that we inherit a cocoa farm, a common inheritance. This cocoa farm 5 children of some parents inherited it. One of them is a journalist like you. One is a lawyer. One is a physician. We have 2 sisters. One is a nurse and the other one is a pharmacy. Now we have this common inheritance, this cocoa farm. The first question is, how do we manage this cocoa farm to the benefit of our diversity? That's what the Constitution is. So how do you then manage it? The most sensible thing is that each of us will sit around the table and each person will give his own thoughts. The nurse may focus on health. The lawyer will focus on law. The physician will focus on advancement of medical services. Maybe the teacher will focus on books and so on and so on. And then they come together and agree
on how to manage the farm.
On how to manage this cocoa farm.
Okay, Dr. Abayomi.
Yes.
I'm quoting the words of Chief Emeka Anyaoku now. He said that we need a new legitimate people's constitution.
Yes.
And while speaking earlier, you did say that we do not have a constitution.
Yes.
This is 1999 constitution
Yes.
as amended. Are you saying that it is just a mere book?
Yes. Now, that's why I brought this book. In order to answer your question. Now, if you look at it, it says,
we the people.
Now, before you even come to that, it said, whereas the federal government has created all the governments, its president, vice president, governors, deputy governors, chairman, National Assembly, even local governments constituted it. Whereas the coordination of something, the coordinated collective recommendations of a conference on it, whereas, and so on and so forth. And then he said that, and whereas Constitutional Debate Coordinating Committee has presented the report of its deliberations to the Provisional Ruling Council. It was not to the people, to the Provisional Ruling Council. And then, Provisional Ruling has approved the report. They were the one who approved the report.
That was during the military.
During the military. And then he now said, and this is where the issue is. And whereas it is necessary in accordance with the program of transition to civil rule for the Federal Republic of Nigeria after necessary amendments. After necessary amendment and approval by the provisional, and then he said, now therefore, the Federal Republic of Nigeria hereby enacts, there shall be for Nigeria a constitution which shall be set out in the schedule.
Like it was imposed.
Yeah, that is it. And what is even interesting, there are 2 issues here. It now said, like you said, it now said, we the people. Which people? It is a blatant lie. There was no people in it. But 2 issues here. In one time, he says that, now therefore the federal government of hereby enacts. They use enact here instead of decree. 2 issues. They know that you cannot decree a constitution on the people. You know, in all their decrees, they say hereby, the military government hereby decrees. But in this case now, they said enact. They realize that you cannot decree a constitution. You have to enact it. But more importantly, they have no power to enact a constitution for the people. It is not a government that gives a nation a constitution. It is a constitution that gives a nation a government.
Okay, if that's the case,
If you don't mind,
okay.
Sorry, let me just conclude. Now, because I want to go to the issue. But they realize that a constitution's validity must come from the people, not from a government. So they then lied, blatant lie. And then they now said, like you just said,
people.
They now said, sorry, they now said, we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in peace and so on and so forth, do hereby make and give to ourselves a constitution. Of course, we didn't give it to ourselves. They gave it to us.
Okay, Joshua said something at the beginning of the show. We have had Pronaco, we have had Jonathan's conference, Obasanjo, and all sorts of conferences. And instead of calling for a new constitution, can't we amend this particular one of 1999 to suit our differences in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of diversity?
Now, a good question. But the problem, when you say you amend, you are focusing on the content. It is not the content of a constitution that validates it. It's the procedure of making a constitution. How do you amend a constitution that is imposed on the peoples of Nigeria by military in order to make it originate from the people? It is impossible. A constitution that lacks legitimacy is not only unamendable, it is also unamendable. The problem of the constitution, all those PRONACO and all of those things, they are focusing on the content. But that's not the problem. The problem is the legitimacy, illegitimacy, in the sense that, like that cocoa farm, we did not sit down around the table and agree in a consensus, reapproachment, where we put in all our excellencies, concerns, interests, and desires, and input it in a document that is called a constitution. For example, you look at the situation of Nigeria, the southwestern Nigeria, their preoccupation was education and civil service. That was important to government, was important to them. Education was, agriculture was, industry, Awolowo. So that is their interest. In the East, maybe their interest is commerce, markets, innovation, production, export. In the North, maybe it is religion, their relationship with God, all of that. Nobody did that. Rather, the military just put up his body, come up with a constitution, got there, they received it, and then but even more disturbing is the fact that even this constitution came into effect after governments have come into effect. If you look at this constitution now, it says that it will come into effect on May 29, 1999, after all governments have been constituted.
So we must engage in such a way that people of different groups, culture, must sit down together, dialogue, adjust here and there, and fashion out a constitution that is suitable to meet all their demands.
Exactly, and agree on how they want. They agree on to create a government over themselves. What manner of government do we want for our people? What manner of government do an Igbo man or a B.O.B. or a thief want for the people, or the Hausa or the Kanuri? That's how you make a constitution. But in this case, the military, one of those 5 children that has in that inheritance, that farm, one of them happens to be a soldier. So he took a gun and then said, hey folks, you will have to organize and manage this farm according to my wish. He put a gun on the neck of the people. And the people said, okay, we will accept. In the interim, because we want to preserve our lives. But now that the gun is gone and the soldier is gone, and then why we have some manner of peace, does it not make sense that we should now sit down and agree on the document how to manage that cocoa farm?
Dr. Abayomi, yes. I think I'm the least person to tell you how complex Nigeria is.
Yes.
You've been in this country more than
yes, for 74 years now.
That is substantial, more than the country itself.
Yes.
From what I understand, and from what I can see moving forward, they said even the 1999 Constitution was a function of the existing Constitution before the advent of the military.
79. Function of 79.
79. Yeah. And the people that actually eventually marshaled this particular 1999 Constitution were brought together, and for some people, they felt that it was well thought out because we had constitutional lawyers who sat down to do this.
Yes.
Perhaps the military orchestrated it, which is just for administrative purposes. Yes. But beyond that, according to the Constitution, because we can't work in vacuum, we can't rework a Constitution without the provision of the Constitution making room for, I don't know about law.
I think I understand what you're saying.
So how do we
we
go
go
about,
further
yes,
in
go
the
about
circumstances that we
creating a
have
new
now?
constitution, if not from the
What is
creation,
there now?
exactly, creation of the Constitution through the National Assembly.
Okay, now, first and foremost, the Constitution is not the creation of the people. Here it says, and whereas the Provisional Ruling Council has approved the report, subject to such amendments as are deemed necessary in the public interest, and they decided to amend it, the report, according to their wish, not according to. Now, in the circumstances, now we have established some fundamental principles. This Constitution didn't create government for us. Government was created before this Constitution. This Constitution lied about itself. This Constitution is devoid of approbation, and so on and so forth. Where do we now go? How do we resolve the problem? There's only one way that the problem can be resolved. Now, the first thing you must appreciate is that Britain has no constitution, but it has a legitimate government. How did it get a legitimate government? Because from the votes of the people, the same way Nigerian people voted to create the National Assembly before this constitution came into effect. It is the same way Britain votes. So legitimacy comes from the votes of the people who have delegated their power to a National Assembly to make law. Just as the law made by the British Parliament is legitimate without a constitution, but with the delegation of the authority of the people in the same manner, the National Assembly of Nigeria, because they have the delegated power of the people through the votes of the people, can make law for the people. Which law do they need to make? They need to make a law to enable the peoples of Nigeria to give to themselves a constitution setting the perimeters.
Thank you. You literally fall into the trap I'm trying to say.
Yes.
And which is, so we have to go through the people.
Yes.
Or that we
through
have
the representatives of the people, the National Assembly that is to whom the power, they delegated their power to make law.
So the National Assembly you can see now, the 10th National Assembly, you see them doing that.
No, they are not. I'm not talking of amendment now.
Yes, I mean,
they are rushing to amend.
Yes, new constitution.
They have to make law to enable the people to give to themselves a constitution, and they set the contours. For example, they could say from each constituency, local government, certain number will come, and they will say it from this. And in the case of Nigeria, it's very simple, because like you noted, we have had different documents from Pronaco to Constitutional Conference. So they can look at all those documents, put it together, and then come up with a document that is fit for the diversity of Nigeria. So the only way that you can give legitimacy to a new constitution is one, the National Assembly, to whom the people have delegated their power through their votes, the electors, should make a law to enable the people to give to themselves a constitution setting the perimeter. The people will now meet according to that law.
Dr. Abani, just a second,
Yes.
you are not answering my question.
Yes.
You have given us like the way forward as to having the National Assembly understand that they need to get the people, set the parameters for coming together, the peoples of Nigeria to come together.
Yes.
The present National Assembly is going through a constitutional amendment as we speak.
It's a waste of time.
So the question,
an exercise in futility.
So the question I have is, with the way you're looking at these members of the National Assembly, do you see them getting to that point, saying, look, for us in the 10th National Assembly, we want the peoples of Nigeria to birth a new constitution that will truly reflect the saying, we the people of Nigeria have decided to enact this constitution.
If they don't want to, the people will make them do it, because they are supposed to represent the people. But I don't want the peoples of Nigeria to be discouraged. We started a struggle against military government in order to have democracy. For me, There were 3 detentions in the process, 1 for 1 year. The 3rd detention was in just prison. But we got democracy ultimately. The question is, what do we want? Are the peoples of Nigeria satisfied with this nation? Nobody in this nation is happy with the state of the nation. You cannot continue the same thing and expect a different result. If we were making progress at independence under the structure of government that was initiated by ancestors, and now we are deprogressing, going backwards, and everything is getting worse and worse and worse in Nigeria. Does it not stand to common sense that we should look at? So the people, if they say they don't want to, the people will make them do it by their demand. I think I'm about the first person who started to talk about the fact that this nation has no constitution in this country. Maybe about 5 years ago. Now, it's becoming more acceptable, more understandable. It's becoming a public dialogue now. Even I wrote a book, in my book, Constitutional Powers and Duties of the President, page 14. I discussed the differences between a law and a constitution. And I said, a constitution is not law. A law deals with only one instance. A constitution deals with all issues of a state.
Okay.
A constitution is an agreement by the people to constitute government over themselves.
As we continue to patch along with these documents, because you have said it's not a constitution. So that Constituent Assembly, what format is it going to take? And Chief Emeka Anyaoku, while addressing Mr. President, did say that he should send an executive bill to members of the National Assembly, giving each region or state the power to elect maybe 2 or 3 people without any political affiliation to represent them, so that people can come together and fashion ways of bringing on board a new constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That's an idea, it's an opinion. Everybody is free to suggest an opinion to the National Assembly. There's nothing wrong with that. Just as here, you could, members of this LTV can come up with ideas, submit it. The point is this, that whatever thing you submit to the National Assembly has the delegated authority, delegated power to represent the people. We look at it and come up with a law. It could be an executive bill. That's not the materiality of the issue. It can come from, wisdom can come from any source. But the point is this, that the National Assembly is the only body that has the legitimate authority to come up with a law that will now set the perimeters of the process, set in motion the process of granting and giving to Nigeria a people's constitution, a constitution of the people, because it will tell you that the people will come together through their delegated representative. This is what happened in America. America had a confederal articles of confederacy. That was what they had. But when they met in 1787, they realized that they had an imperfect society. They needed a better government. And so they decided to have a federal constitution. Every serious nation looks at its affairs and then comes to the conclusion, well, we need to do things differently.
Okay. It's a touchy issue in the country because being a young man, so I've heard also covering judiciary for a while, everything that doesn't emanate from this particular constitution is deemed ultra vires, right? And that means doesn't have a footing anywhere. So how do we begin to speak to the issues of whether it's constitutional or no constitution when we can't? You talked about, look, it's about the people voting for it. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
I understand your position because this constitution is the gauge. It's considered to be, the standard by which we take everything.
Yeah, everything from. How do you explain that, sir?
The point is that there's no problem with that. The first thing you have to accept is that the Constitution is unconstitutional.
The Constitution is unconstitutional.
Unconstitutional.
So, yeah, this table is glass. It's made of glass.
Now, let me tell you, the Constitution is unconstitutional because a constitution that is constitutional has two elements. First, legitimacy. It must emerge from the people. Secondly, it must command the approbation, the approval of the people. It must emerge from the people through a uniform process, and it must have the approbation. This constitution does not emerge from the people, it emerges from the military. Secondly, it didn't have the approbation, it has the approbation of the military. It says, deemed necessary, and now the report was submitted to them, they amended it, they approved it.
Some of the recent agitations that we have in the country,
yes.
If we have the People's Constitution,
yes.
you think it's going to address some of these agitations?
No, that is not. They will have issues. Every nation, America has its own issues. But the foundation of a nation stabilizes the building of a nation. Regardless of the state of America, America will remain solid.
I'm referring to agitation such as some parts of the country feeling shortchanged.
Yes,
some
it will deal with it, definitely. For example, you look at the situation when we started, every community, Western region, Eastern region, they were dealing with their own products and developing at their own pace. We had cocoa, we had palm oil, the Midwest had palm oil, they had different things and so on and so on. They were using it, minerals. They were out, and then we give percentage to the federal government. But look at the state of Nigeria. The military came, took everything to the federal government, and they messed up everything. Today, there is no peace, there is no order, there is no good government, there is no development. The only thing we have is a revolution of rising frustration in our nation. And everybody is disenchanted with this nation. And unless something is done, President Olusegun Obasanjo said recently, we are sitting on a gunpowder because this nation has 62% young people, 62% of its population, and they are getting tired, frustrated.
You just mentioned somebody that I felt that the Providence has given the opportunity.
To do the needful.
To do the needful. But he's only speaking that much. His voice is louder.
Yes.
When he's no longer in that position.
Well, yes, you're correct. But I told you.
How do you explain things when, before you get to that position? In fact, the present president of Nigeria is one of those that have advocated for constitutional amendment. Yes. Or better still, restructuring.
Yes.
That we allow for the regions to grow and all that. But I don't know whether there is a particular spirit when we get to that place.
I have argued this in his own house when he was president. Olusegun Obasanjo, President Olusegun Obasanjo, one morning, he had the villa. And I told him the military constitution is I remember my expression, it's a fruit of a poisonous tree. And the poisonous tree is the military. The problem is that the military didn't want to affect or effect what they gave us. He knew that the constitution was given forged or not, foisted or not. He knew it told a lie. But where is the courage to undo what you did as a military something? That's where the problem is. But now that both the military, the police, the civil, the kings, the women, the youths, all realize that Nigeria is not meeting the expectation of the people. The question is, should we continue on a path that brings disorder, chaos, unfulfilled, and imperfect society? I think it makes only sense to say no, we shouldn't.
For me, the political elite will have to, they are in the position to build the cart, because I personally,
they will not build any cart to let the people.
So how do these people that you're talking about?
That's what you are doing now. this exactly.
Because
that is exactly what you are doing now. As long as you are raising this dialogue and creating consciousness on the people. This was what you did during the military. Was it not the same thing? People started to say, well, we want democracy. We don't want to come under arms anymore. And the dialogue continues growing. And we will have it.
Okay,
we must believe we will have a people's constitution. And we must have it.
If Obasanjo was part of the military, and of course later he became a Democrat, and
Yes.
Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was never a military man.
Yes.
Now he has all the opportunity in the world. He was an advocate of restructuring,
Yes, although
good
they
governance.
are talking of restructuring. How do you restructure a nation that has no structure? It's
So
not about
as we speak,
restructuring.
there's no structure.
Yes, there's no structure.
But we have federal, we have state, we have local governments, and we have
It's the
people representing us.
constitution that gives a nation a
A
structure.
Okay, so what do you expect him to do now that he has the power and the authority to change the narrative?
Very good. What he needs to do is what I just told you. He needs to have a meeting with the National Assembly, that body that has the delegated power of the people to make a law for the people, like in Britain, that has no constitution. And in that meeting, they should agree that, look, this nation is in chaos. We need to take a new look. This is the way to do it. Please, National Assembly, you have the delegated power of the people by their votes. You were not brought into existence by this constitution. Please go ahead and come up with a law to enable the people to give to themselves a constitution.
With your relationship with him over the years,
Yes.
does he have the confidence to do that?
The confidence or the capacity?
The confidence, capacity,
He has
the
everything.
ability.
He's the president of Nigeria, elected by the entire corporate electoral power of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He has it if he wants to do it. A great leader takes difficult positions in the interest of the nation. In the case of America, we are talking of only 55 people. Dr. Quinn, the philosopher, said 55 people of the greatest minds in the world. They wanted to create the greatest nation on earth, and they did. It is a question of decision. A nation changes because of his leadership, the greatness, the tenacity of his leadership.
Okay.
Abraham Lincoln in America, is it a Yuku something in Hong Kong? And so on and so on. You go around. Yes, he has the capacity, he has the authority. The question is whether he has the desire.
Okay, I want you to, it's because that's bugged me a little bit, and so many people have argued in this respect. And that is, look, it doesn't matter the kind of constitution, whether it's the People's Constitution, the 1999 Constitution as amended, or any other constitution, even the United States Constitution. Because no constitution can aptly capture all the entire the challenges, the problem, or laws. They will always, you continue to have amendments and more revising what the Constitution said. But the people say, look, the argument is about the people.
What does that mean? That's not a serious argument.
The argument is, look, no matter the kind of constitution you have, whether the people's, if the people do not have a reorientation, obeying the constitution is just, because even the one that we have now, we have flouted it. And it's not about whether we have a perfect or imperfect constitution.
No, first and foremost, it is pedantic to say it doesn't matter whatever we have. If it doesn't matter, why do nations have constitutions? If it doesn't, why did our father and our parents have worked to have Nigeria a constitution? If you say it doesn't matter, then anybody can just write anything and make it a constitution. Of course it matters to the constitution of a nation. That's number one. The other issue is you don't make a law to direct how the people, that people should behave in this way. You make a law and the people would act according to, and Nigeria is not a lawless nation. In spite of the disorder, there is a law in this country guiding the people. The issue is the foundation of a nation is in jeopardy. It's like the foundation of a building. And you say it doesn't matter how the foundation is. If you say it doesn't matter, you wait until that house collapses and kills the entire family. Is that what you want to wait for?
Okay.
The UK you mentioned, alluded to, do not have a written constitution like you.
Yes, because they chose not to have a constitution, but they have constitutional process. Constitutional process is that they created a parliament to which they delegate their power through elections, and they gave it the power to make law. So you can decide not to have a constitution if you wish, but nations from the British, or nearly all nations, have constitutions. There are only a few nations that follow the process of the parliament. And even then, like I said, they exercise delegated power by the people, and that is why the government is legitimate. In the case of Nigeria, how do you do that? We have chosen to have a constitution, and it makes sense because of the diversity of our nation. Okay,
if we have a new constitution now, do you see Mr. President having the courage to deal with terrorists, of course, oil marketers, and some of the issues raised recently by the protesters as regards bad governance in Nigeria?
Depending on the new constitution. If you look at this present constitution, the burden on the federal government is too much. If you don't have food, if you don't get food gari in your house, in my house, in my local, in my town in Okeagbe, they say it's the president and the federal government.
In terms of allocation sharing, the federal government gets more.
Yes, but the point I'm making is that a new constitution will look at all of these issues. It may not even the federal government that will handle. For example, at the beginning, in 1960 to 1963, the Western region, we had ambassadors in London representing the various regions, and so on and so forth, and so on and so. There are so many things. The federal government was controlling was the armed forces. We had local policemen in those days. We had agricultural extensions, and so on and so forth. So the new constitution will deal with all of this. Luckily enough for us, we have had the experience from all our preoccupations as a nation, sufficient to be able to know where we need to move to the right or move to the left.
This question I'm about to ask is not part of what we're talking about, yes. But do you think having a new constitution will deal with the kind of scenario playing out when Ogun have a dispute with a particular company, and in France, the planes of Mr. President was seized?
Yes.
Where you have, there's no proper demarcation.
Yes.
Do you think
it will deal all of those issues, because these are all experiences that we have gathered, and having gathered experiences from this, we will now take it into consideration in fashioning a new constitution.
I want to say thank you very much, Dr. Tunji Abayomi, a constitutional lawyer, for helping us this morning to deal with the issue of the Patriots' call for a political reform, of course, a new constitution, knowing now that, of course, you've been at the vanguard of having a constitution of the peoples of Nigeria.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
As you said, it's a conversation that must be had. We'll continue to have this conversation moving forward. I want to say thank you very much for joining us to have this particular conversation. The Conversation Lagos continues after this. Don't go anywhere.